how's it going? I'm Tobias. I want to talk about the ego. I think the ego gets a really bad rap. I hear a lot of philosophies suggesting that we need to go completely against the ego, that it is really the reason why we're not reaching our full potential, saying that we need to control or manipulate or even kill the ego. There's just so many negative connotations around it, like we're egotistical or narcissistic or whatever it be. Now, I would offer that if we were to more fully understand the ego and to really embrace and befriend and love the ego, that things would go way better. And through my own self-reflection, that's what I've found. So, what is the ego? The ego is really a mental construct of our own personal identity. It's really just a sense of separation. It's a way for us to separate. It's a way for me to separate me from you. It creates an individual lens that we can see the world through. And I think that this is very necessary, because if we didn't have that, it would be very confusing. I would think that I'm you and you're me, and everything would, just kind of mix together. And I mean, what would even be the point of life? We wouldn't have a capacity to self-express or experience life or love or anything if we didn't have an ego. So the ego is very necessary. Now, the ego has been developed over our whole life. Since we're, a child, since we were born, I mean, we've been taking in ideas and beliefs and values from our parents to our teachers, to mentors, to authority figures, to everybody that we've kind of looked up to, and we've taken in those all those mental ideas and beliefs and values, and through that we've molded and conditioned all those things into basically our own ego. So the ego is really a complex or a big synthesis of everything that we've really gone through. To break it down even further, there are ego parts. There are parts of ourselves that are different than other parts of ourselves. That's why a lot of times we find ourselves saying, well, part of me thinks this, but another part of me thinks this. Or part of me wants to do this, and part of me wants to do that. And if we don't feel like our ego parts are integrated and, working on the same team, then it feels like there's an internal civil war. And when we have these negative connotations or this belief that the ego is a bad thing, then the ego gets very defensive. And when it gets defensive, I mean, we end up, making bad choices and, choosing bad habits. If there's an internal civil war, then, part of us, tends to self-sabotage the other part of us. So there's really, a huge conflict that is happening within our ego parts. And we need to go back and really do the inner work necessary to realize that maybe some of our ego parts need some more loving. Maybe there was a wound or a traumatic experience that part of our ego really went through, and we need to go back and resolve that issue and make it so that we are integrated and that all of our pieces and parts are on the same page, and that we're working as a team. So for me, it just works way better when I feel like, hey, I'm working with my ego and my ego is working with me, and I'm working to heal all of my pieces and parts, and that feels way better. So that's my perspective, and that's how I work through. And I think the point of life is really to grow and expand. And that also means that my ego is growing and expanding. So that means my ego is getting bigger. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having a big ego, as long as you're developing it in a healthy and functional way. And if you're not doing that, then you come off as in a very dysfunctional way, and people disagree with your ideas, or people have a hard time with your viewpoints or your perceptions or your judgments and everything else that happens. So I would offer that maybe we can start to look at our ego as a good thing and look at the ego as something to really love and embrace instead of to really reject and think of it as like the enemy. So what would your life be like if you started to really love the ego more? And what would your life be like if, your ego was part of the team instead of against the team? Just some ideas and thoughts that I would offer. So let's start to love the ego if you're willing to give it a shot. Okay, until next time, talk to you. Peace.